Example 6 wants us to find the measures of different angles in isosceles and equilateral triangles. So the first one here, example A, says if the measure of angle CBD is 130, what is the measure of angle BAD? Okay, so CBD would be this angle here. This big angle here would be CBD. Okay, is going to be 130. So I'll put it on the outside here, kind of. But if we look at triangle ABC, we notice that that's an equilateral triangle. So if it's equilateral, we also know it's equiangular. So we know these three angles, angle C, angle CAB, and then angle ABC are all going to be the same. So they're all going to end up being 60, right? The three angles of an equilateral triangle are 60, 60, and 60, right? If we do 180 divided by 3, we get 60 degrees. So all three of these are 60 degrees. So if angle ABC here is 60 degrees, and then the whole angle CBD is 130, we can do 130 minus 60, which is going to be 70. So we know the measure of angle ABD here has got to be 70 degrees. Okay, and then this triangle here, ABD, triangle ABD is an isosceles triangle. So we know that the two angles at the bottom here are going to be congruent, right? So across from our sides that are congruent are going to be the angles that are congruent. And so we know they're equal to each other, and we also know the three angles add up to 180. So we can do 180 minus 70 is 110. So we know these two angles have to add up to 110, and they have to be equal. So we can do 110 divided by 2, which is going to be 55. So we know the measure of angle BAD, which is this one here, is going to be 55. Right, and then BDA as well is also going to be 55. Okay, so that's the first example. So if we want to draw it a little bigger though, so we can see it a little nicer here, that triangle on the left, right, I'm not sure if that's drawn the best, is equiangular. So all of these angles here were 60. 60, 60, and 60 because it was equilateral, which also means it's equiangular. So it's always going to be 60, 60, 60 because they need to add up to 180. Okay, and then we had another triangle here, right? That was isosceles. Okay, they told us this angle here was 130 degrees. So since that whole angle is 130, we did 130 minus 60, and that gave us 70. Okay, and then here you have an isosceles triangle. Okay, the converse, or I'm sorry, not the converse, but the isosceles triangle theorem says that the angles opposite the sides that are congruent are going to be congruent. So these are your angles that are congruent in your isosceles triangle. So we know they're equal to each other. And again, if you want to put an x in there, that would be fine. Right? And then you would do x plus x, if it writes for me, plus 70 equals 180. The three angles of a triangle add up to 180. Okay, and then you get 2x equal plus 70 equals 180. You subtract 70 from both sides. That's 2x equals 110. And then you divide both sides by 2. And so x here is going to be 55 degrees. So BAD would be this angle here, 55 degrees. Okay, so that was the first one. If we go to the second example, let me just refresh the page instead of trying to erase all that with an eraser. That's not going to work. It's going to take me back to the beginning. I already know it is. So let's go to example 6 here. Okay, and let's look at example 2. B here. Okay, so they're asking us what's the measure of angle U, which is this one over here. And we have basically two isosceles triangles. So again, I'm going to draw it bigger here so we can see it. So let's look at our first triangle. So we have STV, T and V. Okay, they're telling us this angle here is 72. And we know by the isosceles triangle theorem that the two angles opposite the congruent sides are going to be congruent. So opposite SV is angle T here, and then opposite ST is angle V. So these two angles here are congruent. Okay, so again, we got to do, we know the three angles of the triangle need to add up to 180, and we know these two have to be equal. So again, we can do 180 minus 72, which is going to be 108. And so we know these two angles have to add up to 108, and they have to be equal. So we can do 108 divided by 2, and that's going to be 54. So we know the measure of each of these angles is 54 degrees. Right, these two are going to be 54. Okay, and if we draw in the rest of our triangle here, the other one we have attached here is VUT. That was a really bad line. Okay, so UVT. Okay, and we know this is also an isosceles triangle. So we know this angle here, VTU, and then VUT would be congruent because those are across from the sides that are congruent. But the one thing we need to fill in first is this angle up here. So we know these two angles form a linear pair. Right, they're going to form a straight line here. So we know those two angles are a linear pair. So we can do 180 minus 54. Okay, which is going to be 126. So we know this angle here is going to be 126. And then since we know the three angles of the triangle add up to 180, right, we can do 180 minus 126. Right, which is going to be 54. Right, and then since they have to add up to 54 and they're equal to each other, we can do 54 divided by 2. And that's going to give us 27. 27. So these two angles here would be 27. Right, and the 54 is an exterior angle, so we know that 27 plus 27 is 54. So that would also have been another way to do it. Okay, if this way is confusing here, just put in x's instead. So you could have done x plus x plus 126 equals 180. Okay, and then solve for x. And same thing here. You could have done x plus 72 for the first one, right? You could have done x plus 72 equals 180. Okay, and that would have given you 54 in this one, and then 27 for these. Okay, and then what's the measure of angle U? It's going to be 27 degrees is going to be our final answer there. Right, and then you got your triads, which I think are very similar to the two examples we just did.